Planet X, the dark red star headed for a collision course with Earth. Some are saying now we will see freak weather, volcanoes, earthquakes, great floods, tremendous loss of life here on this earth, disasters, catastrophe as we have not seen for thousands of years. A new sun may be created, supernova explosions in the heavens, signs and wonders just as was prophesied. But more than that, interplanetary visitations by aliens from outer space. Yes, UFOs. The ancient gods and heroes may return again. There will be comets, the tails of which appear to be the tail of a red dragon, a great serpent in the sky. Even a changing of the axis of the earth, literally the poles shifting, planetary changes on a cosmic scale. Hello friends, I'm Texe Marrs. Many people are indeed predicting catastrophe and soon. And my mail is now hot and heavy with people wondering and fearing this Planet X that is coming. Some people say it will come in the year 2003. That's the year we're taping this very video. But others say no, 2004, 2006, 2008. Some say the planet will come in conjunction with the end of the Mayan calendar, the year 2012. Still others say 2026. And some astronomers say, yes, there is a strange object coming toward Earth in the sky, a dark red star, but it will be hundreds of years. Other astronomers say 3 million years. What is the truth? You know, so often in the past, we've been frightened by events that simply did not occur. When the Hale-Bopp comet came a few years ago, there was even the Heaven's Gate UFO cult, and there was the Order of the Solar Temple, and men began to so frightfully consider what would happen in the heavens. They thought the end of the world had come. But Jesus tells us in Matthew 24 and in other verses of the end of the world. Is Planet X the end of the world? We need to look at this because so many people are going to be asking you questions as a Christian. You need to have the answers. And what we're going to look at today is the truth about Planet X. Yes, I believe there is a strange phenomenon that we're going to be seeing in the sky. It may occur very soon. It has to do with the coming again of Jesus Christ. That will be the good sign that we see in the heaven. But before that, there will be the evil portents in the heavens. And we need to look at those as well. You know, not too long ago, I was at a conference, and a young man was there, and he had authored this book. Actually, it's a book he sort of put together from others. Now, many of the sources of this book are New Age in origins, and of course there's some also scientific reports. But he believes this planet is coming very soon. It's on an elliptical orbit with planet Earth, and it's been traveling, of course, for millions of years. But this orbit, it comes about every 3,600 years, every 3,600 years. Many people are saying that, and they believe that now is the time for it to come again. When it came the last time, 3,600 years ago, give or take 50 years, it caused tremendous problems here on Earth. A changing of the axis. Some say the dinosaurs were made extinct at that time from the face of this planet. Others say that the planet Saturn, which was the brightest star in the sky, began to recede and fall back. And there were other planetary changes in the sky. Now that it's coming again, some say it could literally collide with this planet and destroy the whole planet and all of its inhabitants. Others say it will just go into its orbit very close to Earth, But the gravitational pull of this so-called red star planet will be so mighty, will be so powerful, that it will cause calamities here on earth. And perhaps as many as 90% of the earth's inhabitants will be scorched, will be killed in one way or another through this planetary catastrophe. So we do need to look at this. Now it's interesting. I've gone to all of the top astronomers and their, let's just say, eyes on the sky, their telescopes, and asked them about this. And I've studied all of the literature and the most recent issues of Sky and Telescope magazines and so forth to see if I can get a clue to this. Now it's interesting that many of them do talk about certain signs in the heavens. Something seems to be coming. They're even talking about a 10th planet. I'm going to show you some of the news items on that in just a moment. So even the scientists are saying something is coming, but they don't know just when this will come closest in its orbit to planet Earth. They're also denying that it's in the year 2003 or even in the year 2004, 5, or 6. So they're putting it off into the future. Of course, the gentleman that wrote the book I just showed you, Mr. Hazelwood, called Blindsided, he and others are saying there's a cover-up. There's a conspiracy. They're not telling us the truth. That this planet X, this 10th planet, is headed for Earth, but they don't want to cause fear and panic on a global scale, and so they're hiding it from us. Of course, I do believe there are conspiracies, and it would not be a big thing for the Central Intelligence Agency and other world intelligence agencies to put pressure on the small group of laboratories and the people who run the top 5 or 6 telescopes and observatories that are looking at the heavens at all times. I can understand why there could possibly be a conspiracy. But, you know, frankly, I'm in agreement, though, with what these astronomers are telling us. I do not believe that this is the year for Planet X. I do not believe that next year or the year after that. But there is a deep occult undercurrent, and there is prophecy that we need to know about when we look at Planet X. Now, I believe if we want to know the truth about it, we do need to turn to God's Word. I want to show you what the Bible says about this momentous event that's going to occur in the heavens. For after all, if God did not prophesy it, my friends, it's not going to happen. But in truth, there are fantastic statements of a prophetic nature in God's Word. Let's go to those right now. First of all, we see Jesus' own words in Matthew 24, verse 29. He says, "The powers of the heaven shall be shaken in the last days." We read too in Mark chapter 13, verse 25, "The stars of heaven shall fall." Isaiah in chapter 24, verse 20 says, "The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard." We see again Jesus in Luke chapter 21, verses 25 and 26. "Upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity." That means people are confused. They're bewildered. They're perplexed. "The sea and the waves roaring. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth." Those are fantastic prophetic utterances, my friend. Now listen to this one. It's interesting that Mr. Hazelwood in radio programs, the man who wrote Blindsided, who believes this collision is literally going to take place with Planet X, and there's a cover-up by the world's governments and by the observatories and the astronomers. He says that this star that is coming, one of the names, and he gives 34 different names he said he's found in the literature, including Marduk, Nibiru, and this name, Wormwood. Yes, one of the names people are bantying about is the name Wormwood. A star called Wormwood is headed for us. Where would they have gotten such a name? Well, turn to Revelation, my friends, chapter 8, beginning with verse 10. And here's what it says. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven. This is one of the key events now that are going to occur in the end time as chronicled in Revelation chapter 8. There fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third place of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter or poisoned. We see then a great star, as it were a lamp, falling and going into the ocean, and many people are poisoned because of this. Now, Revelation 12 tells us about the war in heaven. It says in verse 7 of chapter 12 of Revelation, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and it prevailed not, that is the dragon, neither was their place found any more in heaven. God conquers the dragon, the serpent, who is Satan, it says. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Jesus is going to cast out the devil and his angels, 1/3 who rebelled against God. And there's so much more we could talk about. Chapter 9 says, the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit. My friends, a star falls. But he's identifying here, God is identifying an entity, a being. And I'm going to give you the name of that being in just a moment. This is a dark angel, and he has a key to the bottomless pit, to hell itself, to the abyss. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And to them was given that they should not kill them, that is, human beings, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shape of the locust were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Friends, these are synonyms for the devil. Abaddon, Apollyon. And this is the dark angel who opens up the bottomless pit. And imagine the description of these devils that come forth. Strange creatures, like locusts, but they sting like scorpions and hurt men. There are going to be momentous events in the last days when the key is opened, and out of the bottomless pit come these creatures from beyond. It's going to happen. And with Planet X coming, there are some who say, the great gods, the ancient gods and goddesses and deities, the mighty men of old are coming back again, and they're going to reign over us. Did you know that there have been many religions, Scientology and others, and there are many UFO cults, and there are books being passed around today that are occultic in nature, and they are saying that these great beasts, these great alien entities from outer space are going to come upon the face of this planet once again, And they say those are the ones who planted the seed of men on this earth millions of years ago, the claim is made. And they're coming back again. They are our gods. Of course, this is a lie, but you can see the seductiveness of such lies, especially during this technological age. Well, we could go on and on about the amazing things that are going to occur in the last days. Revelation 6, verse 12 talks about a great earthquake and the stars of heaven falling unto the earth. It says, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Think of the stars falling from heaven. But I wonder, is this symbolically speaking of the angels falling? The stars falling from heaven, coming again to earth? Jesus said in Matthew 24, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Friends, if Jesus Christ did not come again, everyone on this planet would be destroyed during those times when the stars fall from heaven. So yes, there are going to be catastrophic events. Now the question is, when will these things occur? You know, his disciples asked Jesus, Matthew 24, what will be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus gave them certain signs. One of the signs is incredible. He says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it shall be when the Son of Man returns again. As it was in the days of Noah. Let us turn to our Bible, and we're going to see something fantastic. Let us look as it was in the days of Noah. And then you will know whether this planet X that is coming in this 21st century is that time. Is it here? Let us go back to the beginning, and we shall see. We turn to the book of Genesis, chapter 6. Let us see what God says about planet X and those that come in its wake. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Verse 4 says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. Now, my friends, let's look at this passage very carefully. First of all, we find it says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. If we study this very carefully, we will find out that the sons of God are the fallen angels. Literally, those angels which fell from heaven, the stars that fell from heaven. And these wicked devils, these wicked demons, led, of course, by, you might say, Apollyon and Abaddon, the Satan entity, the dragon, the serpent, as he's called in the Bible. They saw that the daughters of men, in other words, human beings, women, human beings, were very pretty, were beautiful. And they didn't just ask them to marry them, they seized, they abducted whomsoever they chose. And from these, it says in verse 4, they had children. And those children were like giants, mighty men, the men of old, men of renown, the ancient gods and goddesses, were they not? Now, what we need to understand there is that word giants in the Bible, there are really two words if you look at the meaning. First of all, there is the word the Nephilim. The giants were the Nephilim. And then there's the word the Rephaim. The Rephaim. Nephilim literally means the fallen ones, the angels that fell from their first estate. But there's more than that. They were also, we see in the book of Deuteronomy, they were also called the Rephaim. What does that mean? It means the dead. In fact, Deuteronomy says that these fallen angels were of the congregation of the dead. They were literally walking dead. So we see then there were giants in the earth in those days. But there's a greater meaning. They weren't just large in physical stature and size. They were super intelligent. They were supernatural beings. They were a combination, a hybrid of human and devil. Does that shock you? It did me when I began to study this passage of Scripture. But there can be no doubt about it. Now it's interesting when we study this, we see that Noah, on the other hand, was a just man. He walked with God, and he was perfect in his generations. What does that mean? It doesn't mean he was perfect, that he had no sin. There is no one who has ever come to earth who had no sin, who came as a man except Jesus Christ. And Noah was no exception. What does it mean that he was perfect in his generations? It means, unlike the rest of mankind, Noah was unpolluted in his blood. His blood was unspotted. His DNA was perfect. It was right from Adam and Eve in the garden, in that lineage. He had no demon blood in him. He had nothing of essence of the sons of God and the daughters of men when they bred together. He was not one of the giants. He was not of the Nephilim. He was not of the Rephaim. He was perfect in his race. And that is the very meaning of that word, if you will study the word generations there. His race, his racial type. He was perfect because he was unspotted. Now, with the rest of the earth, God repented that he had made it. And he caused a great flood to come on the face of the earth. And only Noah and his family who went into the ark were saved. Now it's interesting that there are many legends and stories that came up about this time. And we know that there are books. And people are now saying, oh, these were these sons of God, these giants, these mighty men of old, men of renown. They must have been the ancient astronauts. They must have been the ancient gods and goddesses that came to earth. And so people try to put a good light on this, not understanding the Word of God. Here's some books, for example. Here is a book that sold millions of copies back some years ago called Chariots of the Gods by Erich von Däniken. This caused incredible commotion. Here's another book called In Search of Ancient Mysteries. Did man begin on earth, or was he sent here from other worlds? It asks the questions. Here's a book by a man named Eric Norman called Gods, Demons, and Space Chariots. The sons of gods fell from space. Were they aliens from outer space? Then there is a man named Velikovsky who's written about the catastrophes that came upon the earth about this time. Now what we have to understand, my friends, is this, that in the occult literature, in the occult secret doctrine, it is stated that there is a correspondence between the stars, the planets, the heavenly bodies, and mankind. They say, as above, so below. We need to look at this just a moment and see what we can discover about the meaning of this. Because the Bible talks a lot about stars falling from earth. Jesus said of Satan or Lucifer, he said, I beheld Satan like lightning fall from heaven. What does this mean? Can a man be a star? Did you know that Aleister Crowley, the man who called himself the B666, a head of a form of a church of Satan, the OTO, head of the Illuminati of Europe at the turn of the 20th century, Mr. Crowley said this. He said, every man and woman is a star. He didn't mean that we were Hollywood actresses and actors. No, he meant that we correspond with the planets. Because in occult astrology, it is believed that the stars affect your behavior. And it is believed even that there is a star for every person, and that every person is a star. And that the devil and all of his angels then would be stars as well. Of course, we know that there are many people who believe in astrology today. I remember that President Ronald Reagan and his wife Nancy Reagan so much believed in astrology that his entire presidential calendar was based on what the Reagan's astrologer told them would be the most fortunate dates and times. He could not meet with world leaders until and when Nancy Reagan first checked with her astrologer. So there are many, many millions of people who believe in occult astrology. But there's more to this. You see, in the book Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike, the former Sovereign Grand Commander of Universal Freemasonry, stated this. He said on page 670, the argument was that the heavens and the stars which make part of them are animated because, he said, they possess a portion of the universal soul. And therefore, said Pike, they are intelligent beings, because that universal soul, part whereof they possess, is supremely intelligent, and they share divinity with universal nature. The stars are divine, and we here on earth then are represented by the stars. And thus the entities from heaven are stars, including the fallen stars. Now, if we go back to the ancient historical literature, including the records of Babylon, Greece, Rome, but particularly Babylon and Egypt, we're going to see records of these star deities, these star gods and goddesses, these mighty men of old that we are told fell from the heavens. Yes, the ancient records of false religions actually record and tell us that there were strange beings that came in what appeared to be spaceships or UFOs. They fell from the heavens. There was the beast that fell into the sea and rose up out of the sea, and that would correspond to Revelation 13 verse 1, the beast that rises up out of the sea. And they had strange craft, and they were giants, and they had supernatural powers. And yes, it is said that they took of those whom they wanted the daughters of men. And even the ancient religions admit this. But what they don't admit is that these were in fact the fallen angels, the devils. They say they were gods and goddesses and deities, and they began to worship them all the way up to the Tower of Babel and even afterwards. These were the giants that were worshiped by people, the mighty men of old. They were in fact representatives of the devils that had fallen from their first estate, which was heaven. Here's some illustrations to prove this to you. Here is a Sumerian engraving discovered on a clay cylinder. It seems to indicate some kind of an ancient flying craft floating above the ground with wings. And some have even said they can see the solar panels that are involved. Here is in stone a carving of the Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda. And by the way, the very name Ahura, you might remember, is one of the characters from the Star Trek series. Many of the NASA space flights and Star Wars and Star Trek characters came from the names and the exploits of these ancient deities, these fallen angels. But here is Ahura Mazda in what appears to be some kind of a circular object or craft which has a landing platform on it. Notice the wings of this strange god. Then again, we have some other pictures of this. Here from the South American and Central American area of this globe, we have what has been said to be a Mayan from the Maya tribe, the Mayan astronaut. The Mayan astronaut. It is said that these ancient deities, these gods and goddesses, these interplanetary beings that came to this planet, also left us incredible monuments such as the pyramids and Stonehenge in Great Britain. Here we have some medallions, and notice what they appear to be. The first figure here is the divided bull. And then we have a tree on the right which represents Nimrod, the mighty one who built the Tower of Babel. Notice the bull, the man who had horns and yet was a bull, but he's torn asunder. He's torn asunder, of course, as were all of the gods and the goddesses, these Nephilim, the Rephaim, the giants. When the flood came, they were destroyed. And I believe this ancient coin, and that's what this basically is, or medallion, indicates. You notice the little dolphin above the head of this ancient beast. He was rendered asunder, cut asunder in half when the flood came and killed them all. Here we have what appears to be a king riding a dragon. And notice the strange occultic code there in the book. Is this not Apollyon, Abaddon, Satan? Here's a famous painting. It seems to be a woman lying on a bed while she is being tormented by devils. Is this some indication all the way back to Genesis, where the sons of God, meaning the fallen angels, had sexual intercourse, relations, took whoever they wanted of the women of earth, and as Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah? And we have to understand too, when we return to the Bible, it says there were giants in those days and afterwards. Now, for some reason or other, even after the flood, God allowed some of these giants to come back, to return for whatever reason. For example, in the book of Deuteronomy and the books of the Kings and Exodus, we read about them. We read about the Anakim. I think Zechariah Sitchin, a very well-known author today, who talks about the planet Nibiru coming back, sort of planet X. He calls them the Anunnaki, but the Bible calls them the Anakim. We know of the scouts of Joshua, and they came upon men who appeared to be giants, and they said, "We are like grasshoppers in their sight." We know of Goliath, the giant that was slain by David. The Bible talks about Og, king of Bashan. Did you know that he was over 18 foot tall, according to the Bible? 18 foot tall. Yes, these were mighty men, but they were more than that. I believe they were men whose blood was tainted, and maybe God, for punishment, turned them into beast. Half men, half beast. Look at all of these mythological creatures, the gods and the goddesses, and the creatures with their supposedly supernatural powers that the ancients tell us about. And many men today are now writing books and occult histories, and they're writing of these mythologies, and they're telling us these gods and goddesses are going to return again, even in the form of interplanetary extraterrestrials. Here is a picture of Mithra, Diana, the Hindu goddess Kali, the Hindu deity Ganesha. There's the Hindu god Krishna. Here we have a half man, half beast. We have Medusa, the goddess whose entire head or scalp was full of serpents or snakes. Athena, she is the goddess that sits atop the Capitol building of the United States even today. Imagine that connection. Here is Atlas. It is said he held up the world. Cyclops, who had an all-seeing eye in his forehead. Apollo and Daphne. Hercules, the strongest of the gods for all time. Icarus. Scylla. The famous Spanish painter Goya pictured Satan as a giant. And look at the giant that Goya painted. And there are more. Here from an ancient occult book is Pan, the horned god with cloven hoofs and a face like the sun and horns. And notice he's playing his bagpipe. And to the side of him is, of course, the star. He is a fallen star, we're told. Here, yet again, is another strange creature, Pan, god of the forest. This is in the National Library of Paris, France. Here we see the Orion constellation, and there you see a medallion in the corner, and that is of the ancient Norse goddess Frigg. Here we have other cloven hoof angels and a Latin inscription. These angels are very common in Freemasonry. Notice, if you will, please, their cloven hoofs and what appears to be some kind of a serpentine lower half of the body. Are these not fallen angels? From ancient Babylon, we have these bulls. Notice the head of the man, body of the bull, and they're winged creatures as well. Here we have a sphinx-like creature. Then we have Anubis, the jackal-headed god. Baphomet, whom it is said the Masons and the Knights Templar worshipped. Look at the star in his forehead. We have the Minotaur and many other mythological creatures. Were these the fallen angels? Do they represent the fallen angels who came to earth? And is Planet X indicative of these creatures? Recently, Mason, in fact, he's the cameraman for this production today, gave me a copy of this book. He said, Tex, you will find this very interesting. It's called The Ultimate Alien Agenda by James Walden, a doctor. It talks about the re-engineering of mankind. If you look very carefully at this book, you'll see the eye of the serpent and the scaly green appearance of the book. It's interesting. He says about the aliens that are coming and supposedly abducting women with their UFOs and their spacecraft and so forth. He believes they are aliens that were once here who seeded men on earth. And the author says that must be why he is so drawn, attracted to serpents. Many people are attracted to serpents today, it seems. And we even see popular music stars like Britney Spears, who performs with a albino python snake wrapped around her neck. It was thought that the great gods and goddesses, the sons of God, the fallen stars, it is said that they represented the mighty serpent because he was the serpent of wisdom, and they too are like serpents of wisdom. Tertullian, one of the early Christian, one of our forefathers, you might say, stated this. He said, the dragon, or Satan, became the supreme object of worship of the pagans. He said that Satan, in the form of the dragon or the serpent, occupied a prominent place in the Egyptian mysteries and also those of Greece. These heretics, said Tertullian, magnify the serpent to such a degree as to prefer him even to Christ himself, for he, say they, gave us the first knowledge of good and evil. So we see then who is really represented by the fallen angels. Is it not the serpent? Is it not the devil? And yet we're being told that there is a planet coming from outer space headed this way. And when it comes, there might be not only incredible planetary changes on this earth in the form of catastrophe, but that aliens from outer space, entities that were once here before as gods and goddesses, and the giants, the Nephilim, they're back. They're back. And they're here because they love us. And they're the serpents of wisdom who want to share their divinity with us. You can see the lies of the devil and all these things. And now let's look. Throughout history, we've seen the story of these devils represented. Here is a dragon painting that can be seen in a tomb in the Valley of the Kings in Thebes, central Egypt. Here we have an ancient painting and occultic-like a code of Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail. Notice it has 3 horns on its head. That is the father god, the mother goddess, and their son, who is to come, the Antichrist. Even here in the United States, the serpent was worshipped. Here is a very interesting picture that I know you'll find of fascination. Coiled over 1,254 feet, this is the Great Serpent Mound in the state of Ohio. No one knows how it got there. Was it Native American Indians? But someone worshiped the serpent, and we can see the mounds, the signs on the planet. Now, the serpent has been worshipped in many ways, and these gods who are supposedly returning with this planet Earth will come in many forms as well. And let's look at some of the forms in which the serpent is said to be coming very soon in conjunction with planet X. Here is a being that appears to be some kind of a Babylonian fish god. Here we have the Egyptian goddess Isis. Notice the small fish tail in her headdress. And here we have the Babylonian god Yanes. That is spelled O-A-N-N-E-S. Yanes. He was a fish-tail amphibious being from the heavens. The Babylonians said he founded civilization on earth. Yes, they say the aliens from outer space founded mankind's civilization, brought us great cities, brought us the monuments, even the Tower of Babel. Notice the fish headdress. You'll remember the Philistines. King Saul was killed by the Philistines, and they cut off his head, and they took his head into the temple of Dagon. And who was Dagon or Dagon? Well, here we find examples of Dagon. Dagon, in fact, was Janus, the fish god of the Philistines. And by the way, if you want to see the sign of Dagon today, just look at a modern picture of the Pope of Rome. Notice the fishtail headdress. So Janus, the ancient fish god of the Philistines, Dagon, is still being worshipped even today at the Vatican in their ceremonial dress. As far as the goddess rising up out of the sea, the great fish god, here's some other examples from a book we have entitled Signs and Symbols. Here is Capricornus, the sea god and goatfish. The Bible talks about Leviathan. Here is another image of Dagon. And then we have Scylla, a many-necked and headed dragon from the sea. We have the mermaid who rises up. We have Triton. All of these are forms of the beast who fell into the sea, the star that fell into the sea. Among the tribes of Africa, there is a tribe called the Dogon. Notice the similarity, the Dagon or Dagon and the Dogon. And the Dogon said that many, many eons ago, from outer space, came some strange amphibious fish god creatures. They came in a spacecraft shaped like an obelisk. And these creatures they call the Nomo. They were amphibian gods, and they had amphibious feet and hands. And these fish god they worshipped. They came, they said, from a star far off, hotter than our sun, called Sirius, S-I-R-I-U-S, Sirius. Sirius, they said, had another planet, let's just call it Sirius B, that circulated or orbited around it. And it was said that there is even a third planet, an invisible star, circling around Sirius. In fact, Sirius has been worshipped for thousands of years, my friends. The Masons today worshiped the blazing star from Sirius. The ancient Egyptians worshiped the planet or the star Sirius, and from it came the name of their great sun god, Osiris, and the name of their goddess, Isis. Now this planet or star Sirius, a man named Robert K.G. Temple wrote a book about. In 1976, this book caused an incredible international interest in the planet Sirius. Now I want you to remember that Mr. Hazelwood and a number of other pseudo-astronomers are saying today that it is the planet Sirius that is coming, that is the planet X that is headed, that is the dead for planet Earth, that is the dark red star on a collision course with this Earth. Some others, such as Zechariah Sitchin, call it Nibiru. All in all, Hazelwood said there are 34 names, but I have found 71 names so far in the occult literature for planet X. Certainly, though, Sirius has great impact because of its being embraced by Freemasonry and the Masonic lodges around the world. Here is a picture, actually a drawing by this African tribe. No one knows how they were able to understand that this star Sirius would have a Sirius B satellite or star circulating or orbiting around it. This is an actual drawing that the Dogon tribe of Africa in Mali and West Africa drew. And yet this has been transmitted to them orally for generations and generations, even before astronomers were able to sight this millions of miles away. Here's a drawing of the strange spacecraft that they said came down from the heavens, and these amphibious beast fish gods fell into the sea and then came up out of and were able to do supernatural acts. And even today the Dogon worship these beings which they call the Nomo. Here's a picture of Albert Pike. Let me tell you a little bit about Albert Pike, the former Sovereign Grand Commander of Freemasonry. Of course, the house of the temple that he caused to be built is just 13 blocks from the White House. Now, in every temple of the Masons, in every lodge, is, of course, the blazing star of Sirius. Now, Sirius in the Egyptian religion was always worshipped as the great star god who was Lord of the underworld. Isn't that interesting that Masons would worship the same being known as the blazing star? And their pentagram, the pentagram of the planet, the star god Sirius, is found in almost every Masonic lodge today, as well as the great temple of the Mormons in Salt Lake City. Here from France was a movie called Forces Occultes that discussed Masonry and this planet. Now, Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the Egyptians, was thought to be from the planet or the star Sirius. And then we determined that there is another tribe in Africa whose ancient lore and legend told them that there was a god to be worshipped who came from the Eye star, EYE, and had an all-seeing eye. Not too long ago, the Hubble Eye on the Universe, let's just call it, the Space Telescope, gave us this picture. It was in the National Geographic magazine. One wonders if this has something to do with the great eye star known as Sirius. In my book, Texe Marrs' Book of New Age Cults and Religions, I actually tell about a New Age occult community, a commune that has been set up called Sirius, and they too worship the great deity that came from the planet Sirius. Now it is said that the planet Sirius had an explosion at one time in the history of the world, and a great chunk of it came off. A great, let's just call it satellite. And it was hurled into outer space. And when it came close to this galaxy, there was a mighty explosion. The planet Saturn, they said, was very primary at that time, but it began to recede, to fall. At one time, it is said that the planet Saturn was a second sun of planet Earth, that we were a binary sun, planet, and galaxy. We'll talk about Saturn in just a minute. But first, let's go to the planet Nibiru. Nibiru. So many people are talking about that because a man named Zecharia Sitchin. Here's a copy of his book, by the way, a picture of the front cover, The Lost Book of Enki. But he's also written the 12th Planet and a number of other books. Mr. Sitchin seems to have gained a lot of ground recently. He claims to be a scientist and seems to have credentials. But he says this Nibiru in its orbit will someday come close to Earth again and cause great signs in the heavens and catastrophe here on Earth. Nibiru. One wonders where he got the name Nibiru. And I began to do research on this. I couldn't find it anywhere. You might say on the internet, in any encyclopedia, any book that I was able to discover, no expert that I could talk to, but I found it in the Bible. It tells us that there was a great god worshipped by the Babylonians called Nebo, and he came from a planet known as Nibiru. And the Bible says that in the last days, Nebo, the god of Nibiru, will be made to stoop, and Baal will be made to bow to God. Yes, the great star god Nibiru will have to stoop and worship the true God of the heavens. And that's found in the Bible. You're not going to find it in any occult or Masonic book today, my friends. But you will learn about Nibiru and Nebo, the god of the Babylonians, the star god in the Bible, and the failure that he will be in the last days. Now let's go a little bit further and looking at Nibiru, because Sitchin has gained such popularity, and you need to know about Nibiru. Is it planet X? And what is exactly Nibiru? In his book, The Sirius Mystery, Robert K.G. Temple says that Nibiru is actually a synonym for Horus, the great Egyptian sun god. Lord of the lands, he was called. And Horus also is a synonym for the dog star. And of course, the dog star is what Sirius is called. You may remember the old term, the dog days of summer. This was because it was in the summertime, around July the 21st, when the great dog star would come forth. And the Nile would flood, and people began to talk about how hot and scorched and dry the earth was. And these were the dog days of summer, and that had relation to Sirius, the great dog star. Now, at the same time, Alexander Hislop, in his tremendous classic expose of these star gods and deities called The Two Babylons, wrote this. He, of course, referred to that biblical quote that I mentioned to you. It's found in Isaiah. Baal boweth down, Nebo stoopeth, it says. And it says the word Nebo comes from Nibba, which means to deliver an oracle or to prophesy. In other words, a false prophet. So that Nibiru would be a false prophet of God. I think that's pretty fascinating, don't you? By the way, Nibiru was represented by the little horn, and those who worshipped this great god Nebo, or the star Nibiru, wore a horn headdress. Isn't it interesting that Daniel talks about the little horn of the Antichrist in the last days? So we have the correlation here of Nibiru, who was actually the god Nebo. Now, remember that Temple said that Osiris, the great sun god, and his son Horus are synonyms of Sirius, or the dog star. Now, it's interesting to me that when you go to study Osiris, you have the fact that he is often represented by the letter X. The letter X. Now, in Freemasonry, we have the jewel of a Knight of St. Andrew. That's one of the rituals of Freemasonry. if you get high enough. And there we have the X, the cross that is the X. The order of the Knight of St. Andrew is the X. It is interesting that it is called Planet X that is headed for Earth. By the way, the invention known as the laser, which looks at all of your groceries when you go to the supermarket or the department stores. Here is a picture of the laser light scanner. You'll see this X, and then of course you have the bar coming down the midst of it. Isn't that very much like the spaceship that came down from outer space in the movie, the popular movie Independence Day? Is this a mistake? By the way, here is the Star of Life that you'll see, that same symbol with the serpent going up the rod or the pole in many medical facilities today. So, here again, we have the great god Osiris, who is Nibiru, who is Horus, who is Sirius, all synonyms, of course, of Satan and the Antichrist. Here I have something very interesting. This is the Masonic Manual and Code of the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Georgia. It's a little booklet they give out to people who are interested in learning more about Freemasonry. And guess what? It says in here that they always have an opening prayer to open their lodge ceremonies. And who is the God whom they pray to? They call him their most holy and glorious Lord God, the great architect of the universe. Here you see it in writing right here on the screen. The giver of all goods and graces. Who is this God? Who is he? They go a little bit later on in here to say his name is Osiris. Osiris is the God of Freemasonry. But there's more than that. Did you know, if we look at the Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets, edited by Barbara Walker, published by Harper and Row, she says, as Lord of Death, Osiris was sometimes identified with the great serpent of the underworld. Ah, now we have a full circle. Osiris, which is Nibiru, or Nebu, is in fact the serpent of the underworld, the head of the serpents of wisdom. Now we've talked about the many synonyms, the many names of Planet X that's coming. And I mentioned that in the book of Isaiah, it talks about Nebo, the Babylonian god Nebo, which actually represents the star god or the planet Nibiru. The same one mentioned, of course, by Zechariah Sitchin, that is headed on an elliptical orbit and headed for Earth sometime in the future. I mentioned also the planet Saturn. Now, I want you to understand something about Saturn. You're going to be hearing more and more about it in the coming days. Saturn is the sixth star, or the sixth planet from our sun. Remember that number 6. The ancients say that many thousand years ago, Saturn was the brightest star. The brightest star. Now we see Venus as the brightest. But they say Saturn was one time the brightest. But a great catastrophe, perhaps a supernova explosion occurred in the sky. And Saturn began to fall back. He became lord of the underworld in the pagan mythologies. But many say someday, when Nibiru, or Planet X, comes forth again, there will be another great explosion in the stars, and the planet Saturn will be reignited. And in his great fiery glory, he will come forth again, and he will become a second sun. It is interesting to me that Arthur C. Clarke, the man who gave us 2001: A Space Odyssey, 2010, in his third sequel, 2060, does talk about this second sun that will arise. And it's interesting that he gives a name to that second sun that is to come. The name Lucifer. Lucifer. How very fascinating. The sun god. Not too long ago, I was at a New Age occult bookstore and I came upon this book called Solar Man. The man who wrote it was one of the top members of the World Federalist. He talks about we're going into an intergalactic age. There will be one world. All the nations will come together, and man will become solar man. Here's a book I read about the ancient secret, fire from the sun. I began to read the ancient Masonic literature, the ancient Babylonian, Egyptian text. I found out, for example, that Saturn is the hidden mystery. He, it is, the one who represents Saturn, is Satan or Lucifer, the dragon, the serpent. Saturn is the unknown God of the ancients. He it is who will come again and be our second son. But it is said he will be reignited. He will be caused to be on fire by Sirius, by the planet Sirius, or Nibiru, which perhaps broke off from the planet. It is that invisible star, the second satellite that once orbited Sirius, but now is headed for Earth again, according to the various occult views. Now let's go to some illustrations of this great sun god, also known as the sun behind the sun, or Saturn. See, many people talked about worshiping the sun god in ancient times when they actually worshiped the god Saturn. The god Saturn. He was called the grand central sun, or the sun behind the sun, the hidden god of mystery. Here we have in Hislop's book, The Two Babylons, we have some sun worshipers. Here in ancient Egypt, we have the great goddess worshiping the sun. Here's some modern symbols of, you might say, sun worship. Here's a Whole Life Expo and some other symbols you see in the New Age today. Then we turn to Saturn. Saturn is interesting, is also known as Cronus, and the word chronology comes from him. He is the father time. You know, every year about New Year's time, we talk about the one who comes, the old man going out, and then the little baby comes in. That old man comes with a sickle. He's also the father of time and the father of death. He's the Lord of death, and he comes with a sickle to collect those who are to die. Notice, in this ancient drawing, we see Saturn, the old man, with his sickle, and there he is with the dragon. Here, from a book entitled Art and Symbols of the Occult, is the old man, the grand man of Zohar, Saturn. Do you see the rings around him? Well, of course, the planet Saturn is very spectacular in the heavens because it's the planet that has the rings around it. And here we have the god of rings. Notice too, this Ouroboros, this serpent wrapped around this triangle, is another sign of Saturn. The triangle representing the old unholy trinity. And there we have the serpent, the ring around Saturn. Here is a symbol, the point inside the circle, also represents the great sun god, Saturn. This is a very popular Masonic symbol. Isn't it interesting that the Dogon tribe of Africa, remember they're the ones that somehow inexplicably came up with the astronomical information about Sirius and its satellite. Here we have one of their drawings. How did they know? This is a drawing of the planet Saturn. How did they know it had a ring? They had no telescopes. They had no magnification. And yet they say that the fish god Nomo told them about the planet Saturn. Now, this god was also worshipped as the great star, and it is planet X, this star that is to come. Remember, I mentioned to you that in the Masonic temples they worship the star, but in the churches of Satan they do also. Here we see the Satanic Bible. Notice the symbol, the pentagram, on the very cover of the Satanic Bible. In my book, Mystery Mark of the New Age, I have many examples of these symbols. Here is a picture on page 45 of a man who has a star in his forehead, for example. And then on page 95, we see 3 samples of the star in satanic formats. Notice the great goat god and his horns. Still, the question is, if Planet X is headed our way, by whatever name it may be called, can we verify that? Have there indeed been signs in the heaven in the last few years? My friends, there have been amazing signs in the heavens. I want you to see some in the last 5 or 6 years, and certainly as we headed into this 21st century. Look at these signs. First of all, the Hale-Bopp planet came. Here from Prophecy in the News, look at the headline, The Great Comet of 1997. More recently, the skies were filled with falling stars. 1998, 1999, and even in the year 2002, the Leonid meteors. They go wild every 33 years. And here they were, right during our lifetimes in the last few years. Look at this magazine article. It says, the stars are falling out of Leo the lion, the astrological symbol. Here from the internet, says solar space storms will disable many satellites in 2000. That was a fear, and some were disabled. Now here's an interesting article. Talk about a sign. Galactic flash puzzles world's astronomers. A great flash of light in the heavens. No one knows what it is. A great galactic flash of light. This article, this newspaper says the starburst blasted the Earth's atmosphere. And then here's another one from another magazine. Scientists detect enormous sunquake signs even on the planet. And as we headed into this millennium, look at this. Awed audience delights in darkness. Clouds eclipse millennium's last sun show. There was a great total solar eclipse. It was the last one of the millennium. And people, here it shows, it says a solar spectacle for the masses. And they're all looking up, even these Buddhist monks. Near the Eiffel Tower in Paris, it says. And they had these little glasses on to make sure their eyes were not damaged. Even as we had this great solar eclipse, there were other signs. Did you know within days of the solar eclipse, as we were moving into the 21st century, a huge twister, a tornado whipped through Salt Lake City? Imagine, you never hear about tornadoes going right into downtown. And there amidst the buildings of downtown Salt Lake City was a fantastic twister that had not been seen in 100 years. But that's not all. Within a day or two, there was an incredible earthquake over in the Middle East in Istanbul, Turkey. Here's the headline on that. More than 2,100 dead, 13,000 hurt. Rescuers frantically search rubble. Twisters, tornadoes, solar eclipses, all occurring. And then, scientists said they found something. Astronomers said they found an incredible geyser in the sky, a fountain of annihilation that is sucking everything it can reach into it. Will this planet also be sucked up by this great so-called fountain of annihilation? What we need to know is people are wondering about death from above. They're wondering about Planet X. And even though the astronomers insist that it's not headed our way in the next few years, they cannot guarantee us that we will not be struck by some meteor, some comet, unexpectedly. For example, here's a story. It says Armageddon can wait. Scientists are now beginning to worry about how to stop killer asteroids. Here's some books that have been written on the subject. Death from Above. This is Sky and Telescope magazine. Talks about the cosmic threats that are getting increased attention. The government is putting millions of dollars into this. And then people are wondering, is anybody out there? Space telescopes find mystifies astronomers. Now we have Planet X. Mysterious object might be first extrasolar planet photographed. Here's another article from the Washington Post on the internet. Mystery heavenly body discovered. And another, a mystery revolves around the sun. huge unseen object orbits on fringe of solar system, and another brown dwarf spotted close to star, and another right beyond Pluto. Friends, that's where Sirius is supposed to be. Beyond Pluto, strange new worlds, it says. And the BBC News, a planet beyond Pluto. And then finally, ABC News, their science department, says a 10th planet, disturbance of comets, hints at something out there. Astronomers, it says, may have found hints of a massive, distant, still unseen object at the edge of the solar system, perhaps a 10th planet. And it's shoving comets toward our solar system. Friends, signs in the heavens are coming. The scientists are saying it. And then Sky and Telescope magazine says a new planet has been discovered. They call it Star 51 Pegasi. It's like our sun, but its companion has no equal in our solar system. And then finally, yet another from the Associated Press. An unknown object is zooming toward Earth. My friends, that was in 1991. Many of these objects take years to get here. Maybe we're on the edge of seeing these signs in the heavens that were prophesied to occur. Now, the Bible makes it clear that when these signs begin to occur in heaven, there will be amazing things that begin to transpire here on earth. Now, I want you to understand something. These fallen angels, these ancient so-called gods and goddesses and the mighty men, the giants, the Nephilim, the congregation of the dead, they may return. But friends, they're not returning from a planet X, from Nibiru, from Sirius, or its invisible star in the sky. There are other regions, and we know them as hell, as the bottomless pit, because the Bible tells us that's where these creatures are coming from. And yet men today seem to be fascinated by the coming of some ancient race of cosmic astronauts. People are fascinated by UFOs. I find it of interest myself, of course, but I look at it from the biblical standpoint. Here in the European newspaper, not too long ago, a few years back, it talked about these incredible tales of UFO aliens and extraterrestrials. And of course, they're often pictured, such as in the movie E.T., as something wholesome and good and loving. They're coming back to guide us through these planetary changes. Oh, they're going to be our saviors. It is said they were here before, and now they're back again to save us from universal catastrophe. Look at some of these pictures, though, and some of the artist conceptions and some of the movie drawings and pictures and images of these aliens. Do these look like your saviors in the end times? Then we have this painting from a book called UFO, The Complete Sightings. Here is of a woman being brought up, lifted up into a UFO craft by alien beings. It is said that women are being lifted up, they're being abducted, and then even some kind of a horrible sexual relations are occurring, and experimentation is going on. And these aliens are creating, it is said, hybrid, half alien, half human beings. I wonder if they will end up looking like some kind of a hideous creature, such as is depicted here. Of course, we have books out. Here's one that looks upon this with glee almost, with happiness. This is a good thing. It's called The Return of the Serpents of Wisdom. The Return of the Serpents of Wisdom. Manly P. Hall, one of the best known Masons of the 20th century, he died just a few years ago. He wrote this book. He says, the phoenix is rising out of the flame. They're coming back. The phoenix bird is rising. By the way, over 100 years ago, from the Constitution of the Freemasons, in fact, this was published in 1723, was this drawing, this black and white drawing. Remember now, the Constitutions of Freemasonry. And look up at the top. What is that? It's Lucifer, is it not? In his great chariot. That's the way they see their great God coming, the great sun god, known as Apollyon, Abaddon, Lucifer, coming in the clouds to save mankind. In the book Childhood's End, this famous science fiction writer, Arthur C. Clarke, wrote something that my friends sent chills down my back. I want to put the quote up on the screen. He sees this evidently as a good thing. You see, people for eons have pictured the beings as, well, look what he says. Read it for yourself. It was a tribute to the overlords, that's what he calls them. You see, they're returning. They're returning in UFO craft. It was a tribute to the overlord psychology and to their careful years of preparation that only a few people fainted when they returned. Yet there could have been fewer still anywhere in the world who did not feel the ancient terror brush for one awful instant against their minds before reason banished it forever. There was no mistake. The leathery wings, the little horns, the barbed tail, all were there. When these aliens return, the cameras of the world, the televisions will be focused on them. What will they look like? Arthur Clarke tells us. The most terrible of all legends, he says, has come to life out of the unknown past. Yet now it stood smiling in ebon majesty with the sunlight gleaming upon its tremendous body. In the Middle Ages, said Clarke, people believed in the devil and feared him. But this was the 21st century. It was one world. And the book Childhood's End goes on to say that people suddenly said, of course, this is the one we've been awaiting all this time. This creature with a barbed tail, with horns, with leathery wings. He is our God. Will the people of earth love their oppressor, Satan or Lucifer? I believe they will. And he will not come as some beautiful figure. Eventually he will come as he is. But because they have been brainwashed and conditioned, they will accept the most hideous form of evil. A man named Barry Kamish, he's Jewish, wrote a book a few years back called Return of the Giants. And he chronicled about UFOs, even in the Middle East and in Israel. And he warns about it. Unlike the Masons and the Arthur Clarkes of this world, he finds this ominous, and he is correct. I want to read to you a final quote here by a New Age occultist, Edward Schur. He says, Lucifer is coming again, and it's a good thing. He's bringing his legions in the sky. And I'm going to quote him from his book. Yes, from his book, From Sphinx to Christ. He says, Lucifer, having regained his star and his diadem, will assemble his legions for new works of creation. Attracted by his flaming torch, celestial spirits will descend to earth. And he will send these messengers from unknown spheres to earth. Then the torch of Lucifer, he writes, will signal from heaven to earth, and the New Age Christ will answer from earth to heaven. He'll be greeted by the New Age Christ and the people of earth. But listen to me very closely. I want to read to you again, Revelation 9, verse 11. If and when Planet X arrives, and all of the signs in the sky and on earth, you have seen them. Be wary, my friends. Be wary. Remember it says, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Some would say, Tex, you're not leaving us with any hope. You're not leaving us with anything but fear for what is to come upon the earth. Now I want you to listen very close to me. God has some good news for you. He has some good news for you. Listen to Matthew chapter 24, verse 35 says, Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. When will these things occur? Planet X, the so-called alien supernatural beings, which are nothing more than the devil and his dark angels, when will they come? Well, they'll come right before Jesus comes. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, said the Lord. No, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Verse 37 again reminds us, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be, as it was in the days of Noah. Friends, the Bible says in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, we have weapons. It says the weapons that we have are not carnal. We have weapons to fight this. They're not carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Friends, every high thing can be brought down into obedience to Christ. How? Through the Word of God. Through the Word of God. And someday, it says in the Holy Word that there will be a new heaven and new earths. We have something great to look forward to. And I want to remind you finally of the Gospel of Luke. And listen to these inspiring words. You think bad things are going to come upon the earth? Look beyond the clouds. Look beyond the shadows to that great sun. And I'm not talking about the sun god. I'm talking about the Son, S-O-N, of God. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Until next time, friends, this is Texe Marrs. Keep looking up.